Well, so much for being here. We're really excited. We've got books for sale at the end.
Oh my gosh! Holy smokes! Totally.
Let's start there. How does this feel? Right?
I am verklempt right now, and hopefully I will not start crying. So
Do it.
Yeah, no, it's a profound wave of gratitude, and it's a rare thing that such disparate people in my life get to be in the same room at the same time, and so I'm very, very grateful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my first question. So you were a writer for a long time, and now you're an author. So how does that feel, right? Everybody in here is a writer.
So we're going to call
yes?
a spade a spade. Tracy is forcing this identity for me to be
Yes.
subsumed. Yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't start writing until 2017.
Okay.
I spoke a lot, and obviously scientific papers kind of come with a degree. But writing wasn't kind of my shtick. I mean, I would read a lot and capture ideas with the idea that it was more about just learning. I'm an avid reader. That's probably an understatement. It's a little scary. The consumpting of reading.
Well, I've never had a conversation with you that I didn't open Amazon and order 2 or 3 books. And then, is that true? Everybody, yeah, a lot of you. So thank you. You've introduced me to a lot of books. So,
yeah.
So for you though, it is different because you keep skirting it, and so I do want you to call yourself an author.
I do.
Okay.
I've gotten better.
You're a fucking author. Yeah. Sorry, I can't say that.
I've gotten better about it.
Good.
This stuff helps. I mean, it's out now in the world with people I don't know, right? It's one thing to write a book and have your parents and your family and your coworkers buy it. But the other day, I got notified by Ingram Sparks, which is the kind of printing company that does all the global distribution. And they're like, yeah, someone bought 400 hard copies. And I was like,
baby.
where the hell did that go? And I was like, holy smokes. And then I got
Christian.
notified it was in Germany. I was like, okay, well, I guess this is out and about. So
it wasn't Christian buying them. That's
No,
good. Okay,
no.
good, yeah.
no,
Good,
it was
good.
not.
All right. I love it. Well, listen, why write this book now? So what about this called to you that you had to dedicate so much time to writing it?
We've talked about this a lot, so we'll probably go down a couple rabbit holes. So first and foremost, I have never understood, I've been wildly envious of people who have creative force routinely appear in their lives. I've taken care of people that way, I've bared witness to people, and I was always quite envious of that and what that would feel like. And in 2017, I was on retreat and was in the middle of a deep meditation and came out of that, and I was like, oh my God, how do people live with this? I got walloped in the middle of that meditation with what this is, okay? What this is now. Stayed up for 24 hours straight, just writing. I mean, I filled an entire notebook full of stuff during that process, and I was just like, I don't know how people do this. Like, how do you live like this, right? And it was, some in the spiritual world would call it awakening. I mean, I don't know. And so at that point, it was, you must do this. And I kind of now know and have a framework for understanding the creative force, our shared.
You've got to tell them. You've got to tell them. It's my favorite, one of my favorite stories.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay, so Elizabeth Gilbert, do you guys Eat, Pray, Love? You guys, okay, yeah, because we see the nodding. She also wrote a book called Big Magic, which is her interpretation of what it means to live a creative life. And as you can imagine, I was like, how do people do this? Well, I picked up, it got published right around that time. So I picked it up, and for the first time I understood it. So she believes that ideas are living entities in this universe. And ideas need humans in order to come to fruition. And so ideas come knocking on your door. And if you don't answer, they may knock again. And if you don't answer, they may push their way in, declare their presence, and force you into connection. Or they may say, peace out, I'm gonna go find somebody else. And for the first time, I was like, oh, that's what happened. And now I'm in a contract with an idea that has yet to let me go. So this is the first of many. But that was a huge, aha moment?
Well, for me, that idea that it lives outside and it's using you, and I have felt that before.
Yeah.
But I usually don't answer the door. I usually, yeah, okay, they just let it go.
That's so cool, right?
I know, right? So like I've been more intentional about things because of that conversation in that book.
Oh, I
So
love that.
I bought that book when we very first started talking
Yeah.
about this. And it has changed how I think about things. So now I go, nothing is random. And I'm not a random person anyway. I'm like everybody, there's something in this exchange.
Sure.
But you have created a much different focus for me in that. So thank you for that. And as you're being enveloped by that idea, you hadn't read that book. So, but
Right.
you kept going. What kept you going on it? Was it just so consuming?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, it kind of once the contract was made, once the okay, I'm all in. I mean, this has got me written all over it, right? I mean, how many people live at the crossroads of human flourishing, death, and suffering? I mean, it's the corner of Jen, suffering, death, and development. I mean, it was like, okay, I'm not sure. I don't know anybody else that kind of does that. So when the contract was made, it was like, okay, hold on, sister.
Yeah.
And learning, I read, Stephen King stuff. I read the War of Art is another book I read by Stephen Pressfield. There were several that I was like, oh, how do people live this life? How do you do this? Like, what happens on Tuesday night, right? And what do you do when you wake up in the morning, kind of thing. I just want to be practical about it. And I learned through Elizabeth's work that you have to be intentional to create context, because the content comes on its own time according to the idea. And your job as the human is to create the context and continually to show up. And so every day was just showing up and said, I'm here, I'm still in. And there were days that it was like,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
And then there were days where there were many days where there was no sleep, and there were, all the things that come with that.
So did you know it was going to be called Suffer? Did you know what it was going to be about? Or were you just dumping all of what was coming to you on paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
no, I did not know that that was going to be it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going to be the title. I don't, it's funny that you say that. I'm like, when did that come? I'll have to think about that.
Did you know the core message?
Yes.
Okay. What is the core message? There are people that have not read it yet. So what would that be?
So bottom line, suffering is your most prepotent, unmet human need. Bottom line.
Right.
Our job in this world is to learn and to develop. And in order to move along the developmental continuum, you have to continue to learn. And you must learn through needs. Needs are there to kind of mark the waypoints between dependence and independence and interdependence and transcendence. And if you don't meet those needs, you don't appropriately develop. And if you allow that need to go languishing, it will turn into suffering. And so when you're bowled over with suffering, you guys know it's like being squashed by a rock. It's like you become immobile. It's unbearable, unwanted, and uncontrollable. And my hope was to give enough language and framework for people to say, oh, I can name this now. And it allows the uncontrollability, the unwantedness, the unbearableness to be a little bit more tolerable, and encourage you to kind of lean into it, because that's where your developmental path is. So.
And you're into the naming of the water.
Oh.
Do it. Say it. Tell them. Yeah.
It's my favorite metaphor. So, fair warning, we're going to be talking about suicide this evening. So just kind of to let people know about that. So David Foster Wallace was a famous author and philosopher well before his time. And in 2005, he gave a lecture at Kenyon College. And if you have not listened to it, it's intoxicating. It's one of the most beautiful commencement speeches I've ever heard. And in it, it's the title is, This is Water is the title of the commencement speech. And in it, he opens with this lovely picture. So for those of us, I love the fact that the large majority of people here can say this, Far Side. Can't say that in many audiences now. Far Side image, right? So think about that kind of aesthetic. One image is old fish, two young fish swimming at the old fish. Old fish says to the two young fish, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" Old fish swims off, two young fish looking at each other. One looks at the other very quizzical and says, "What the hell is water?"
Right.
Right?
Right.
You know, it's a lovely image, right? You get it. Like how much time and energy we spend swimming in this world, and we don't understand the impact that has on us. The most ubiquitous things, plethora of things that are influencing our day-to-day lives, our development in the small picture and in the big picture. And a lot of the work I do, largely the primary work I do, is naming people's water. And so the book is reimagining and understanding really what suffering is, the contents and by which it kind of permeates the world, so that its intention is met honestly and not so, kind of taboo and being afraid of it.
Well, it's a conundrum for me because that makes me so mad. So we went to dinner, and it was just going to be like a quick, I don't know, we were going to have happy hour. We met at Barron's at 5:30. And at 10 o'clock, when they were trying to get us to leave, and I'm not kidding at all, and we walked out, and I was like, wait, I still have more questions. But what you sent, the reason I'm mad is because you made me aware of the water.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
And once you did that, and I'm not going to be emotional, but it changed everything. And this was last fall, and I thought, I can't not know what we just named, and so thank you, kind of, for that. And
it's a both and, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
the terrible sublime.
Yeah, but I'm just warning you. That's what the book is going to do for you. It's going to make you move about the world differently because you will have a knowing of things. So, what's been the experience of people that have read the book for you? I mean, have they fed that back to you? I can't be the first person that said that.
No, that's been, I think, one of the most amazing things, and it's different for everyone, right? I don't think it's a spoiler. So there are 6 flavors of suffering, common kind of themes that we experience based on the 6 basic needs that we all have. And so everybody's flavor is different because whatever they're presenting with whatever need is going unmet shows up in these various different flavors. And so it's quiet things like, hey, what is this, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll pick out one sentence that I'm like, okay, let's go down that rabbit hole. What's that about?
You do always seem to be surprised.
Yeah, I'm totally shocked.
Okay.
Yeah, totally shocked and just awe and wonder. As a physician, you go through all this training and you're like, okay, if I can save one life, I've done my job, right? And so this takes on a whole nother way of creating a healing space for people to kind of say, oh, this one sentence changed this one person's experience in this one moment in time, and there's so much joy and love in that.
So a lot of people might not know what you do for a living, and should we talk a little about, maybe I should have asked at the beginning.
I don't know.
This is my first time. I'm
I know.
just making it up as we go, right?
Most everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm a physician. I'm a hospice and palliative medicine physician. I've been practicing for 25 years. There was a point that I was a chief medical officer of a very large healthcare system that will go unnamed at this point. I have taught in pretty much every level of schooling, from primary school all the way up and through multiple graduate schools. There are attendings that actually come to Clare House, where I primarily teach now. So, and now I'm an author.
Yes, well done. Well done. That's yes.
Well, tell everybody what you do, because I think context is good.
I interview authors. That's what I do for a living. We're going to keep this about you. So the book you want to jump in? I mean, the book starts with the death of your father.
Sure.
So give me the context of the timeline of that as you were writing the book.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to expand upon?
So 2017, this big idea comes. I show up every day. Books present themselves to me. Circumstances present themselves to me, whether it's talking to a patient, a colleague, or I get called to do some project. Because my paid job is I do consulting work very similar to Tracy, and so that's kind of how our worlds collide. There were big pieces of my own personal development that occurred in the time from 2017 until its publication this last year. And ironically, paradoxically, my father's suicide that happened in 2021 was the last piece of the puzzle that had to fall. And it was really clear at that point, because I was well into writing. The book had already taken structure. And then the publisher showed up just under a year later. And so all the pieces kind of fell into place right after that.
So in that moment, as all the pieces are coming together and you're writing about it, you have to be a bit detached to experience that. So there's the emotional side of you being the daughter, but you having that experience as a physician, and this is what you do for a living. Juxtapose those for me.
Yeah, so that's a myth about compartmentalizing, dissociating, or what's the word that you just use?
I don't know.
Where you're not.
I'm so nervous right now about asking you about this.
Oh,
I didn't know if I was going to add a no.
Oh, okay. Great.
All right.
I told you I was an open book.
I know.
They all know that.
All right, good.
So it's a myth about detachment, right? So it's one of the hidden curriculums of physician training is that one must not, in any indication, ever get engaged emotionally with your patients, right? So you must remain stoic and all this kind of shenanigans. Nurses on the other end, and there are plenty of them in this room tonight, so tell me if I'm wrong, but we've talked about this quite a bit in my own family, because I come from a family of nurses. My grandfather and I had to suffer Thanksgiving often. Because my grandfather was a radiologist, and damn doctors. Nurses' hidden curriculum is to lose oneself in advocacy for their patients. So we call it enmeshment. So no engagement or enmeshment. And either one of those ends, when you're dealing with high, kind of very complicated emotions, no one's safe, right? Because as humans, and I will quote Daniel Siegel, who's a pediatric psychiatrist until my last days, all we want to do is feel felt. Oh, I heard a lot of ums. You know what I'm talking about? We just want to feel felt.
That's right.
Right? And so, so I learned early on, because I had a really good mentor, to learn to be present with emotion based on, I knew myself very clearly, where I began and end, and what emotions I was dealing with in that day, and understood this is my kind of space, right? And understood what was needed in the room. And for the first time, we can talk about symbolic language and things that come into being in your life. But at that point, I had begun to see myself as an alchemical bowl, being a container for clear seeing, truth telling, and transformation. And so learning to kind of know I'm a bowl that will hold this space and time and have the strength to do so. And when need be, I'll just wipe myself out because that's not mine, right? So learning how to have images and archetypal kind of processing that happens allows you to be fully amidst that emotional turmoil and know how to hold space for the center of the storm, right? That's my job, is to kind of remind people where the center, the quiet.
Boundaries.
Right. Well, yeah. For me, because I had learned that skill, I was able to actually take in all of those emotions and transform it into the words that are in the book.
Interesting. I love that.
Right. So the idea was be in this, right? Because this is the fodder, and so we pulled it and kind of pulled it all out and put it back in there.
Well, you can tell it informed the book, and for sure. And and there's so much in the book I want to talk about. You talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy or Maslow's.
Totally. I think I had an affair with him at some point in some other life, as my husband and my child are sitting in the back of the room. I just feel like he's a person I knew, like him and Jonas Salk.
Okay.
Like I've had dreams where I've talked to them directly. I don't know.
I didn't see that coming. Okay.
Okay.
All right. That's good.
Huge fan.
Yeah,
Obviously, I
clearly.
spent a whole book writing about it.
Clearly. Well, what do you want to say about Maslow, though? Like,
Yeah.
like let's talk about that, because I have studied it. We
Yeah.
we have so many conversations about this, and what I knew, and I thought I would stand on stages and go, "Let me tell you about it." I knew nothing after I talked to you. I went home like I should quit talking about it. Because I would say, well, your behavior is determined by your unmet needs, and
Totally.
you got to. But the depth, and so just go as deep as you want to go, because I think that's hugely beneficial, and a big part of the book that resonated so much with me. So, and I'm sure will with everybody else.
Okay, let's like finish the story that Tracy was talking about. So the whole pyramid shenanigans, Maslow had nothing to do with. He was taken in the 40s, post World War II, and used by a business consultant to do organizational design, education. Bottom line.
And I've been standing on stage for years using the pyramid. So
You along with millions of other people.
I know, right?
Right, millions. I mean, they teach it in psychology books that way. I mean, it's not only in business, but in the actual science and teaching, which always blew my mind. It's like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. Yeah, no, they're not stages, they're phenomenon. Like, you don't go denial, anger, check, same thing, so.
Oh, wow, I've got it. Okay, I've got that wrong. Okay.
So, okay, so bottom line, we have 6 needs, okay? And the needs are the requirement of the development of the human sense of self, okay? So Maslow's big thing is self-actualization, which means you must have enough of a self, and in the scientific world, that's ego, and we'll talk about how that kind of has gotten so confusing. You have to cultivate enough of an ego to transcend it. That's the whole point, okay? So as you move from a dependent person, and we have the longest dependency of any mammal or species on the planet. As I was telling my students today, young adulthood is 18 to 40. Okay?
True.
That's true. Right? And then you go through second adolescence.
Yes.
Okay? And we can talk about that later if we want to get to. But anyway, so dependence. Okay? Fully dependent. You're fully dependent for a really long time, actually. And it requires you to have your safety needs, so food, water, shelter, sleep, right, met adequately enough that the need for connection arises, okay? And connection is, the way I talk about it is, if safety is a house, then connection is having a home, right? A place where you know that you are out of danger, you can rest your head, you can feel comfortable to kind of allow your jeans to be unbuttoned and eat the things that you need to do, and people don't really, they love you anyway, right? All the things, right? Your quirks are allowed and welcomed. And when you feel enough belonging or connection, the need then moves you, those 2 needs move you towards independence, okay? Independence then prompts what we call self-esteem. And esteem, we kind of have weird kind of knowledge about that, but from a Maslow standpoint, it covers 2 things. One, I know I have worth. I know I have worth because in connection, I know that I matter to people, right? So I have enough mattering in the life to say, I like myself. I know who I am, and I know what I can do, and I know how I can change the world. And when we have those 3 basic needs met, those are our deficiency needs, is what he calls them. Those are requirements. It's like having the bottom of a boat, right? If you don't have that, nothing else happens. And arguably, a good chunk of the population is working on just getting their basic needs met. Okay? So lots of suffering in there. And so Maslow's like, we want more people to move into what I call your growth needs or your wisdom needs, right? So if Darwin was about survival of the fittest, your first 3 needs, so, safety, connection, esteem, are about being survival of the fittest. Your wisdom needs is about being survival of the wisest. So it's moving into wisdom and growth needs. And that's exploration. So I feel safe enough, I know who I am, to go out and explore the world. As exploration happens externally, then you start being like, what's going on inside? Right? And you start this inward journey of figuring out kind of what are the parts and pieces of who I am. And as exploration isn't adequately met, then the need for intimacy to be fully known and fully felt by another entity, whether that is an idea, a person, or a community. But one has a really strong sense of self in order to fully engage in the need for intimacy. And when that occurs, purpose blossoms, which is our highest need. And from that, you can go from independence, so dependence, independence, interdependence. I know who I am, you know who you are, and the two of us are going to create this third thing.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And from that, self-actualization occurs, and transcendence then becomes possible.
Got it.
Maslow 101.
I know I'm supposed to get questions from the
Sure.
audience, but I have a couple just very quickly. Can you talk about judgment and unconditional positive regard, or do you don't have to?
Sure.
Okay.
So the need for exploration, right? So this is moving, right? You're moving into your growth needs, gets shut down in the suffering of judgment, right? Because what's happened? Oh, I have built this image of myself. I know who I am, and God damn it, I love myself, right? So there's this kind of very like, oh, we're good. And when you start exploring the world, it starts challenging that idea, right? Exploration is about change and about expanding one's horizons. And when it gets really scary, the defense is judgment. I'm going to shut this down, and we do it 3 ways. I'm going to indulge it and become very narcissistic, right? Because I'm better than you, right? We indulge our judgments. Second thing is distraction, right? So I'm going to be busy.
Why did you look at me like that? That was
You asked me this the other day.
I know.
She asked me specifically. I was like, oh, we'll talk about it on Tuesday.
That's right.
We get busy. So, we lull ourselves with consumption and mindless consumption and multitasking. I'm going to keep myself so busy that I don't have to deal with this growth that's being called, right? I need to explore something. So I'm just going to, distract myself from this judgment that's coming up, right? Denying me. Then the last piece is denial, right? Which is just apathy, ignorant, just ignoring, and in its worst case becomes depression. So it takes the 3 primary emotions, right? So anger, yeah, whatever, I'm great. Right. Let me give you a fly the bird real quick, right? Kind of thing. The other one is anxiety, which comes out in kind of multitasking kind of thing. And then depression is just denial. So.
Okay, but what about the positive regard, unconditional positive regard?
So unconditional positive regard is a psychological term, but where it comes up, we're going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. So when people go through the dying process, there are 4 parts, not stages, just parts, okay? First part is being aware that one's dying. The second thing is aware that major change is about to occur. And the third thing that happens is a life review. A fourth thing that happens is you go home, with quotations, whatever home means to you. Some people, the word we use oftentimes is heaven, but home. And so in life review, one of the things that people have died and come back tell us that our entire life is about learning. It's about lessons learned. And so you sit in this life review held by an entity. Some people say it's a feeling, but most people tell you there's some sort of entity that's sitting with them, whether it's a familiar person that they had died previously. All the kids I've ever taken care of will tell you it's angels that wrap them in wings, no matter the background. So for whatever that's worth.
Interesting.
And so you're held in this highly compassionate environment that a lot of people say is this unconditional positive regard. And so how you extend that to your life is overcoming judgment, saying, okay, how do I honestly look at myself? And when you do that with curiosity, right? Because curiosity is the foundation of unconditional positive regard. Then your need for intimacy opens, particularly intimacy with your own self. And the process of acceptance and self-acceptance so that you can accept others unfolds.
That was beautifully said. I mean, you have watched a lot of people transition, and in that, you know, what you know about that, I mean, I don't know anyone that's experienced that to the degree that you do. And I don't even know if I have a question in that. Just the idea that you have that kind of knowing. What would surprise most people? I guess that would be my question about what you experience in that moment as somebody transitions.
Lots, you know, because depending on how someone comes to the experience of dying, either directly or indirectly, as someone who's the way I always talk about is wading into the gray zone of death. So when you move into the dying process with someone that you love, you actually get to participate in those 4 experiences as well. So one of the things that's really surprising to families is as their loved one is going through a growing life review, they often get pulled in through dreams, emotions, memories they haven't thought of before, and understanding that this is a very transcendent experience, not only for their loved one in the bed, but for them as well, if they can get past the societal fears that we have around death and dying. Because when you fully are able to participate in that process, it's extraordinary. I mean, extraordinary. And so watching people be given enough context to kind of embrace their fear and say that you are safe right now. Help people reconnect, again, those 2 bottom needs, that you are safe and fully connected in an environment that allows for the rest of this to unfold. I've seen people on their deathbed transcend and self-actualize in those moments.
Wow.
So we just have to get over our shit. Right?
Well said. All right, so I'm going to take it to you all. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Clark?
Oh, I know this crowd is not quiet.
Or comments? Please.
I haven't read a book like this since I was in college. So it was, and it was like reading a textbook to me because there was so much information. I'm lining or outlining, and I'm doing the whole page.
Me too.
No. I mean, I just need to get this briefly so I can just tag it, and then when I go back, you know, because I have to go back.
That's right.
Anyway, that was.
Yeah, my editor calls it literary academia. She's an attorney.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what she calls
That's
it.
exactly what it is. Yeah, I like it.
Big time. And so I haven't been in that kind of place in a long time. As a person who just reads an awful lot of nonfiction anyway. But the other thing is that I just want to say that I am, and I don't know if this is something you will talk about or if anyone else, I really had to stop, and I've stopped for not real long, but I'm going to have to get my head on to do Holding Paradox. And you were so good. You numbered and set everything up in those pages. So I thought, okay, now I just have to get my head together so that I can do this. And I haven't yet because I haven't yet. I don't know that I can do that yet.
Understood.
It's been
You
wonderful.
want to comment on it? Do it.
So I love that. Thank you for being vulnerable on that. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So, as you'll see, this is meant to be a compass. So it's the compass of suffering. And so suffering leads to a human faculty of choosing, learning to make proper choices. They all start with P in the book, right? So suffer, choose, and when you choose, right, when you choose the more pro-social, more pro-developmental pathway, what happens is certain abilities, certain human capacities start arising. right? So when you suffer judgment, the choice you have to make is to be able to hold paradox. The ability to hold two conflicting truths simultaneously. In the art world, we call it the terrible sublime. So the way I always think about it, pick your favorite piece of art in your head. There's elements of profound suffering and beauty in it, right? It just, that's really good art. That's kind of how it works, right? And that's what holding paradox is, right? And so when you're able to understand, oh, this is the choice I have to make, and start practicing it on purpose, then you allow and create, kind of the next faculty to arise, which then allows you to move into your next stage of development. So paradox is the choice you have to make in the suffering of judgment so that you can honor your need for exploration. So you're exploring something right now that's asking you to hold two truths simultaneously that are conflicting. So that's how the book kind of works in these kind of 4 cycles of suffer, choose, create, die. So.
And we've talked about doing workshops where we can get people through that too.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments? Please.
Can you explain how this works with Alzheimer's patients?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest problems with suffering is a definitional problem. Okay, and that's what I spend the first part of the book kind of debunking. I was really lucky. One of my very first teachers was a guy by the name of Eric Cassell, who wrote the behemoth book for my world, which is The Nature of Suffering and the Goals of Medicine. I mean, world-renowned work. And he and I disagreed on the definition of suffering. So I sit here challenging Eric Cassell. He's now dead, which makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky. I'm one of the very few people that got go to toe on this. So there's 2 ways we use the word suffer in the English language, right? Other languages, it's really interesting how that comes into being. But so I put in the book, I'll just use Webster's example, right? I suffered a heart attack. So it's an event that has occurred, right? Or I had a heart attack and I suffered. 2 wildly different meanings. And we conflate them. We get them very mixed up, right? Yes, we are human beings that are at the whims of Mother Nature and chaos. And we are going to suffer that, right? We're going to experience the causal experience of that. By itself, those events, those external events, are neutral. Yes, sometimes they're painful. But how we interpret those events, how we contextualize them within our lives, can lead to what we call the suffering of suffering, right? So I suffered a heart attack, and I am suffering the consequences of it, right? So it gets really conflated. And the reason why I bring this up is because Cassell believed that in order to suffer, you actually have to have personhood, meaning you got to have autonomy, be able to tell time, space, consequences, and be robbed of personhood in order to suffer. And anybody who's taking care of a child, or person who can't speak, or a dog, knows that that's bullshit. Suffering is suffering is suffering is suffering. So it's about context, right? So what is the context of the person with Alzheimer's in that moment? Because for them, there is no time space, right? Time is obliterated in that mind, right? So what is the context of the experience that they're having right now, and determining how they're suffering in that moment, in that context. And sometimes it's safety. Sometimes it's connection. Sometimes it is about self-esteem and some of the higher needs, because as you guys know, Alzheimer's is shoddy, right? Sometimes their person, kind of their identity and esteem comes back, right? So it's about that person's context. So it depends.
Yes.
Oh God.
One of the common
one of the common frameworks that we have in Western culture is sort of an appropriation of a Buddhist principle, which is pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, right? And it's sort of this, again, that's a bastardization of, of pure principle. So I'm curious about, obviously the tenet of this book is that suffering is not optional, right? Because the goal in that idea is, yes, life is painful, but if you resist, right, the pain, this shouldn't be happening to me, I don't deserve this, that's where the suffering comes. And what you're saying is the suffering is a mechanism to growth and not something to be resisted or avoided. And then, when you were talking about the suffering of suffering, I'm like, well, that's the answer to the question I'm asking, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I love that.
Well said.
Thank you, Alicia. So it was really interesting. My mentor, so Eric was one of them, and then my other colleague, Tamara Vessel, who taught me the emotional kind of container piece of things. She asked me this direct question about being a palliative care physician. The whole point of my practice is to relieve suffering. She's like, but should we? Right? And so my answer to that is exactly what you're talking about, is that as you are a human, you have to develop a sense of self. And as the nose smells, as the eyes see, as the ears hear, as the heart emotes, as the gut feels, as the mind thinks, the self suffers. So as long as you have a sense of self, suffering isn't optional, because it's about development. And so it's an essential component of the self. And if you look at the Buddhist traditions, they say the exact same thing. But we want to bypass that. So spiritual bypassing is the problem, right? So if I go straight to my consciousness and bypass this ego self kind of thing, I don't have to suffer, quote unquote.
It becomes this worshiping of like letting go of all attachment as a way of not having any pain in your life or suffering. Yeah. Which actually is just an avoidance.
It's avoiding, it's totally bypassing, right? And you don't develop in that. You become, in the 70s, they used to call them bliss ninnies. Oh, everything is fine. I'm living in consciousness. Right? You and your underdeveloped sense of self are going to have a house of cards collapse here shortly, sister. So
You did make it. I mean, for me, like all of our conversations, I'm like, okay, I'm willing to do it. Right? Like I was trying to avoid it, for sure.
But a lot of people avoid it because either they don't have language or it feels overwhelming. The suffering, there's a reason why we say that word and everybody blanches. It's lovely for me because it like validates things. Like I said the word suffer and everybody went like this. And so that's the whole thing. The language of it is weighty, right? And so, the easiest thing is avoid, right? I mean, we do a really good job about that. And we have
get busy, just be busy.
Just be busy. Yes.
You're gonna give it to me?
Excuse me.
Uh-oh.
No, it's good. It's good. So I've been fortunate enough to do a couple of retreats with Dr. Clark through Clare House, and she has hit on things in this book. And so this is a heavily weighted book with lots of underlining and lots of information and everything. And so, but don't stop.
That's right.
Because you got to keep going.
That's right.
And when you get to 196, page 196, you got to get there because she starts talking about shard work. And one of the retreats, the past retreat, we did some shard work. Incredibly moving, absolutely wonderful. After I had to pause there because you've got to get your head around it. You've got to get in your head in the right space. And so I went to Clare House last Wednesday and said, okay, doctor. Well, I actually sent her an email. I see work classes that we can come and be together and do this and journey together. But anyway, it's fabulous. It's fabulous.
Oh, thank you, dear.
No, it'll change your life. Let me exclamation point that. And that it was going to be my last question. I'm glad you brought it up. Do you want to comment on it? Because it's the thing that, that left me at 10:30 still saying, do we have to go? So go ahead, do it.
So we go back to life review, right? It's probably the biggest, I think, or at least right now in my life. Life review is the biggest lesson the dying teach the living. That every day, we need to kind of do a review, right? What did my day look like? You know, what did I learn? What are the things I need to repair? What are the things I need to cherish? And so on and so forth. And when we support people in life review, there's a lot of myths that are in each culture that people are like, oh, I know what's happening right now. So in this life review, what happens is you're held in unconditional positive regard. You experience not only your memories from first-hand sensations, emotions, thoughts, images, all of them. You also get to experience what it was like to receive you by the people that were touched by you. Can you imagine what that's like? And in it, you understand what we call the chain of reason. Right? Everything makes sense. Even the traumas that we sustain in our life. Oh, I see how this fits within the chain of reason, right? Cause and effect, domino cascade, and all the things that go with that. And when I help people kind of deal with these emotions as they come up, these memories that come up, some of them are not pleasant. And one of the women we cared for at Clare House, she had a Native American tradition, and she's like, "Oh, we have a story for this. You know, in our Native American tradition, it's believed that we leave parts of our spirit because they don't separate spirit from self. They think it's all one and the same thing. We leave parts of our spirit in the past when we're overwhelmed. Our younger versions are overwhelmed with us, and when we're mature enough, we are responsible during our lifetime to go and pick up those shards and bring them forward to make us whole again. And those shards that are not picked up during life will be picked up during death." Okay? There's a reason why she was very clear about shards. They are sharp, they're painful, they're misshapen, they cut like a blade, and when they're returned, they hurt. And that's why people avoid it. But once they're returned, you become whole again. It's an accepting of part of who you are. And so when people start doing active shard work while they're alive, the wholeness they can experience while alive is worth every moment of the prickling and the cutting and the putting back together. So
I called you. I'm like, it's a shard. I've got a shard. You were like, you can do it. So thank you. True. Yeah. This is the last 6 months of our friendship. Yeah. And you had a.
No, I just about the title.
Yeah.
Suffer. Period.
Yes.
As opposed to suffering or suffer. No punctuation.
Yeah.
Suffer.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes.
Excuse me.
You know directly, I don't pussyfoot around. So it's a direct forewarning about what you're getting into, right? And it's a call, right? It's the call to suffer. We need you to suffer. We need you to show up. Elie Wiesel, you guys know him, right? Holocaust survivor, wrote the book Night. I mean, it's lovely. Lovely is a weird word, sorry. It's impactful, kind of thing. The quote that I put in the book, talks about that we must suffer and we must suffer well. It's our job, it's our calling, right? We have to develop this sense of self in order to transcend it. And we all got to get up the ladder more sooner than later. We got to get more people into the survival of the wisest. We got to quit just fitness. We got to quit consuming, without getting too heady into all of this. We are the set of our species that gets to decide whether or not we get to stick around. It's in science, guys. How cool is that we get to live through the evolutionary jump of the human species, right? And it calls us to move from Darwinian survival of the fittest to Salkian survival of the wisest. It requires us to move beyond and help others meet those basic needs so that more of us can be oriented to growth and creativity.
And this community, what are the right to be in community with other people on the same journey in the same space? I mean, that's why I want to hang out with you all the time, even though it makes me right.
Vice versa.
I've grown more truly from our conversations, and you will too from the book and all the things. And I know that we're supposed to wrap here, but can you just tell them what's next? So what else is going on for you?
So I just finished recording the audiobook.
Oh, yeah.
Dude,
You didn't talk too fast, did you?
I didn't. No, when I read, well, yeah, it was actually really surprising. Like my producer was all set to kind of be like, slow down. But when I read, it takes on a different quality. So that is in production, right? It got handed to
good.
my team this morning at 8:30.
Nice.
That is a very humbling experience to not only read your words, but then hear them coming out of your mouth. It's, yeah, there's nothing quite so. You're like, oh God. And it's really clear, thank you, Miss Donna, that there needs to be a workbook that's associated with it. So the activities of growth that help you move through holding paradox and all the other choices will be there'll be a workbook created that comes out with the audiobook so that people can buy them kind of simultaneously, and that, all the things that you have to do in marketing that I'm learning how to do. But yeah, and so my editor, who is lovely, she was a former family attorney. So she's like, oh, I know suffering well.
Yeah,
And we're good.
For
I got
sure.
you. I'm like, and so she's freelancing and helping me write them. So
And we are talking about getting a small group of people together
I would love that. Yeah.
We should do it, and you'll facilitate that. So if you have any interest, truly, it's we've been
talking about like a book club kind of
Something
thing that
to do the work.
kind of lasts like 6 weeks for each one of the.
I
each
bet
one
we
of the
could get.
needs
I
or
bet we
something.
could get enough people in here to do it.
When's it start?
Yeah.
Nice. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And but you also see a few more books in your future. You want to talk about
Yeah.
that? Okay, let's do it.
So I thought again, this whole creative process, I've kind of been like, yes, I mean, it's kind of, you kind of defer, right? There's definitely a partnership, and there has been times like, I'm like, really, this is where we're going? Like the title, I was like, really? Okay. I got finished, had these books in hand, and it was really clear that things weren't done. I was like, oh no. Like it didn't end. It was like, okay, this is just number one. So what's really clear is that the four parts of the compass. So Suffer, Choose is the next book, and around what we call the words with P in it, right? All the adult choices we must make as humans to allow the adult faculties to arise. Those are all the words that start with A in the book. And so it's Suffer, Choose, Create, and then Die will be the last book. One of my good friends was just like, oh, you gotta write Die next. I'm like, dude, I just lambasted them with Suffer.
You will need to rest.
He's like, but that's like your shtick. I'm like, you love me for that. Most people would be like, peace out, sister. And so I don't know what order. I know it won't be Die. I don't know if choosing or create will come next. They're being written at the same time, so they're like jockeying for my attention at any given day. So those will be coming. The cycle feels like write a year, publish a year, write a year, publish a year kind of thing. So over the next decade, my hope is to complete them all. So.
Well, my last question is just, do you have any idea what an impact you're going to have on not only the people in this room and the people that read it, but just, I really can't wait to see what happens. I have been profoundly changed by not only what I read, but just sharing space with you, and I'm super grateful, and it's so easy to cheer you on. I'm so proud of you, and I can't wait to learn more. And so with that, I'll let you say thank you to these good people.
I can't even believe this place. Like, I've been sitting up here just watching all of your faces, knowing all of your stories, and so grateful, really, really grateful.
All right, book signing at the end. We'll stick around. The store's open for another hour. So thank you. Seriously, thank you all for coming out on a rainy night.
Oh my gosh.
It's great to see everybody.
So grateful.
Okay, if everyone can stay seated, Jennifer needs to get up to the front of the store where she's going to be able to sign books, and it's a lot easier for her to do if you all don't stop her on the way. So I'm going to let her get up to the front of the store. She's going to be up there ready to sign books. If you already have the book in your hand and you're